Please listen carefully.
Perrin, I don't even know how we met, but I feel like I've known you for a very long time. Obviously, it was at some point of doing CrossFit.
Yes.
But was it that competition in like that turf?
Oh,
arena?
the CrossFit for Hope?
Yeah.
That was like 2012. Well, one of the memories I have is you taking photos at regionals in
Yes.
2012.
While competing, I also had this great idea of taking pictures.
Yes.
Now I was on a team, right? We kind of like, I think we snuck in like in the last spot, But yeah, I had this great idea, like, hey, there's going to be all these elite CrossFitters. Let's take some pictures of them. And oh, by the way, I have a workout coming up. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I contacted you after that because you took pictures and I wanted to make a poster out of it.
Yep.
And that poster is still hanging at Requisite Fitness right now.
Too funny.
Yeah.
Yes, I do remember that.
But I think that was part of it, and I
Okay.
think we were just, in a lot of similar circles of just, competing during the weekend, and
Yep.
I think you were King of Prussia at the time.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, I got my
yeah.
start at. Yeah, I started in grad school at Villanova, just at the school gym on my own for like a year and a half. But then my first gym was KOP, and then obviously first coaching was at KOP.
Cool.
Yeah. And that was
Yeah.
back when Requisite was 215.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy stuff. So I thought today we would talk probably about coaching. We can talk about your new adventures going on, but why don't you give people a little bit of background as to like where you grew up, what athletics look like for you, and maybe getting into CrossFit and coaching.
Sure. So I actually grew up very close to here at Springfield Township in Erdenheim, and growing up I would call myself or consider myself your quintessential tomboy. I just wanted to play soccer or play hockey or run around and compete with the boys. I didn't really have any interest in dolls and sticker collection and stuff, so growing up I really chased my cousins and older brothers around, and sports were kind of my outlet to not only express myself, but they were what I considered having fun. So throughout, elementary school, middle school, high school, I just played sports. I liked mostly softball and tennis. I tried to play basketball, was not good at that. At like probably 4'9" at the time, it wasn't really gonna work out very well. And then got to college. I ended up going to Ursinus College, which is actually not that far from here.
Yep.
And I wasn't really planning on going there, but ended up making the decision to go there. So by the time I wanted to maybe participate in a sport, my window was kind of closed. So I actually ended up walking on the track and field team, and I'd never done track and field before. So I just was like, hey, I can run in a circle like kind of fast. Can I, participate and just stay in shape and stay competitive? So
Did someone ask you to do that, or that was just something that was like one of the few options that you could do by that point?
it was, nobody asked me. I was not anything special, but I did have a friend that was a year older than me that ended up being my roommate for 3 years, Mary Ellen, who was a thrower. So I had a connection on the team, and honestly, because it was kind of low skill, I was like, it's just running. So I feel like I can learn, like pick up some of the more technical things, and then a lot of the training, so to speak, is just kind of like effort. I tried some other things that didn't go well. I think I tried rugby. I tried, actually within track and field, I tried pole vaulting once, and that was also terrifying. But so yeah, I did 4 years of track there. Actually, the end of my junior year, I picked up a javelin, because throwing a softball for so long and hitting a tennis ball, my throwing skills were pretty good, and that actually ended up being my best event.
Really?
So I just did that, I think, the end of my senior year, and actually made it to championships in that event. So
Nice.
that was fun, and I learned a lot, I think, about, I would say, just really training hard. I mean, in high school, our sports teams weren't that good, and it wasn't that hard to kind of be at the top, but I was never really pushed. And so now, starting a new sport that I didn't know anything about, I was one of the, I would say, worst on the team. I mean, I got to participate in some relays and we did well, but in comparison to good sprinters, I was not very good. But I continued to get better, and it was a great process of just learning, like I said, how to train, learning how to lift weights and just compete in a sport that is individual instead of team, you know, like softball. So it's just kind of you and your own lane. And track is so pure because obviously you're racing other people, but you're also racing yourself, which is kind of actually parallels to CrossFit as well. So
yeah, you have your times, you know, I mean, track is obviously way more consistent in terms of what you're doing, so you can compare your times to your past times, right? But but at the same time, you're on a team, right? Which for track and field, correct me if I'm wrong, but you as a team gather points up depending on how you're placed, and then that kind of determines the team event or team wins, right?
Yep, for sure.
Yeah.
And then also like being on relays would also be extremely fun, like because you have your individual leg and your team is relying on you to basically do your job and have smooth transitions, but it's also a team effort, and those were always the best by far. So yeah, that was a great experience. And then after that, I graduated college. My degree was in business and economics, and going through college, I was like, I'm gonna work on Wall Street. Like, I'm gonna work for a financial firm because I wanna learn how to make money and really make sure that I feel financially secure coming out of school. And then the stock market crashed in 2007. I graduated in 2008, so a lot of my prospects for jobs just didn't exist anymore. Luckily, I found a company actually in Bala Cynwyd and had a really good job. So I worked on the options trading desk, doing operations, and then I ended up in fixed income. And that was a great experience, I would say, learning what I didn't want to do for the rest of my life. But I think being in a kind of a corporate environment and having sort of a 9 to 5, the hours were actually a lot longer than that, but it gave me perspective on what kind of work I wanted to do, and I just realized I really wasn't happy in that type of work. But at that time is when I found CrossFit. So I think a friend of mine, actually one of my roommates in college, was kind of dabbling with some kettlebell stuff, and she had mentioned it. And then I think 2 years after that job started, I was like, I just need something else. Like there's something missing in my fitness routine I'd like to compete maybe in something. I was trying to run races, but getting hurt and not really training properly. So
yeah, what were you doing? Were you primarily running?
I was running because that was like the only.
That was like the thing to do.
Exactly.
Right? I remember. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah,
like,
and
what do you do out of college? You run.
Exactly.
Like you sign up for Broad Street. You sign up for ING half marathon. You know, like,
all of those. Yeah. But that would it got boring. You know, I wasn't really into it. My routine, I remember it was 6 days a week. I would go to the YMCA and I would do an hour of cardio and an hour of lifting and abs, which was like some dumbbell rows and some crunches, and didn't really know what I was doing. And I felt like that was a really good effort, but nothing was changing. Like it was just, oh, how does this elliptical feel today? You know, a little bit easier, a little bit harder. So, and I was always by myself. You know, I was really just trying to either find programs on the internet or some type of inspiration to set or create a goal, but that's really hard to do when you don't really feel like you know what you're doing. So, so that's I found 215 and Mike and Macbeth.
What did you Google for CrossFit because you had heard about it from your roommate, or were you just looking for gym near me?
Yeah, no, I was looking for a CrossFit gym, and there weren't actually many where I lived because you didn't exist yet. But so I looked for one near where I worked because I figured I could maximize my commute there. So 215 was right in East Falls, right near Bala Cynwyd. So hopped in there. I remember I showed up the first day. Oh my gosh. It was like...
They just throw you into class?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. I was like, can I try a class? Yeah, sure.
Old
I was
school,
like, I have an athletic background. I'm pretty fit.
Yep.
And then, of course, I show up, and it was like 3 or 4 of the fittest people in the gym throwing down on Helen.
Which
And-
seems pretty innocuous,
Yeah.
right? 3 rounds, 400-meter run, 21 kettlebell swings, 12 pull-ups.
Yep.
Like, okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was like, oh, piece of cake.
Yep.
I can run.
Yep.
Like I can maybe do pull-ups.
Yep.
Not really. I think I either did jumping pull-ups or banded pull-ups.
Yep.
And
Yep.
then I think I scaled the kettlebell to 20 or 25 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I tried so hard. I was like, I'm not going to let anybody beat me. And I think I crushed that first 400-meter run. And
Yep.
after that, I was toast. But
Yep.
I couldn't like take my shirt off the next day because my lats were so sore. And I was like, ooh, this is interesting. I like this.
Yep.
So
But you were in. Yeah.
I was sold.
Yeah.
I was like, I drank the Kool-Aid big
Yep.
time. And I would say I continued to do that for the next few years, especially getting into competing and coaching. And so when I was working at the job, I also started coaching part-time. And there was also a 2-year period in there. I was a Phillies ball girl. So I actually
Seriously?
had 3 jobs. Yeah. Yeah. It was a wild 2009 to 2011 was pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess I officially started in 2010 and then started coaching in 2011. And then
Was coaching something that you were looking for? Like at what point were you like, hey, yeah, I do want to coach? Or did, Micah or maybe at that point Jay say, hey, like, would you be interested in coaching?
Honestly, I don't remember, but I would guess that it was probably me. I was probably like, I saw other members coaching and I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, I really enjoy this. I'd like to take a stab at teaching it. And I thought I would be better than I was in the beginning. I remember feeling really uncomfortable and awkward and speaking too fast. That was my biggest thing, was talking too quickly in the beginning. And it took me some time to really feel comfortable and feel like I could own a room, so to speak. And even today, I feel like while I've had a lot more experience under my belt, there's still something special about coaching CrossFit, especially because the people are always changing, or either the people are changing your members or the people that have been your members for a long time are changing. So there's always something I feel like to learn and expand on or do differently. But it I think scratched that itch that I was missing from my job. I was like, I get to work with people and actually be able to help them and establish relationships and witness progress in a person. And I was not getting that thing behind a computer. So I think I had a light bulb in my head at one point where I was like, maybe I could do this for a living. But I knew that it would be a transition and there'd be a sacrifice involved. So. But I did end up doing that. I ended up leaving my job in 2012 and coaching full-time. Micah offered me a full-time position to kind of like run the gym, manage the gym, and take on a lot of coaching hours, which also allowed me the ability to train full-time. So after 2012, when we went to regionals, I was like, well, maybe I can compete as an individual.
Gotcha.
So that ended up being my next goal, and I actually qualified, but also back then I think they took like 60 people or something like that. It was a lot more.
It was a lot, yeah.
So I qualified towards the end, but that was an awesome experience as well. Just really training at the time the hardest I ever had in my life to just do my best. I knew I wasn't gonna podium or any of that, so but that was an awesome experience. And if I was hooked before, I was like really hooked after that.
When you went full-time coaching, you had this realization with your finance job that, oh, this is actually not really what I was thinking, right? So when you went full-time coaching, now obviously you were doing that part-time, so you knew a lot of those elements, but when that's your full focus, some people might have had a realization or something. So did it just affirm what you were already thinking it would feel like? Were things different? What was that transition like to go from kind of standard 9 to 5, right? Not that it was 9 to 5, but to coach, which a lot of people honestly probably think of as a hobby rather than a profession.
For sure. I would say it was probably harder than what I thought it was going to be. I mean, I think sometimes you can create these fantasies in your mind that the grass is greener on the other side, and I'm going to have all this time to train, and I love coaching right now, so I'm going to love it even more when I'm doing it all the time.
Yep.
But, you know, sitting in a gym every day, all the time, then that now becomes basically your second home. It does change your perspective, I would say, on how you spend your time and organize your time, but also having to manage my own time of training and getting other work done and writing programming, and then the energy expended by being in front of people or with people all the time. That was one thing I did not anticipate, because I would consider myself a pretty introverted person, but when I'm in a setting of a gym, I can definitely turn it on. But when you turn it on like all day, every day, it definitely, you need time to kind of like refill your cup. So I struggled for sure. And then also I was trying to get more education. So I started, it was OPT at the time, now OPEX, that CCP in 2013. So I was traveling to Arizona, I was getting other CrossFit certs because I wanted to have more knowledge and education. So all of that was very overwhelming, but it was fulfilling. I mean, looking back on it now that you asked, I think if I didn't find benefit or I didn't think I was on the right path, I probably would have just cut it off and stopped somewhere. And, you know, it was, I mean, I ended up leaving 2 and 5 for a few years, working at CrossFit Center City, which was also a great experience. A larger coaching staff, so more collaborative, and I really got to kind of see how other really good coaches kind of do their thing and their philosophies. We went to regionals as a team again in 2014, and then I started getting into weightlifting, and they had a barbell club, so that it was just a good environment for me to be in, and then ended up coming back to 2 and 5 again. And kind of that's when I really started getting into individualized coaching, so coaching athletes. So, and then I mean, maybe 2014, 2015, I would say I started to take on clients, and then since then I just really just slowly built. Like I didn't ever advertise for anything. It was more just like word of mouth and referral, but I really liked kind of getting into the nitty gritty of a person and like somebody who has a specific goal. Like it's like kind of trying to solve a problem and figure out how you can get them better at something specific. But also for me, the most rewarding part is just the whole journey of, like I said, the person, kind of like what you see in class of seeing an evolution. Just the transformation of all the highs and lows and we're being on that journey with somebody else. I don't know. I just think it's the best thing in the world. So, and I guess now I've been able to somehow sustain that professionally for over 10 years. And looking back on it, it's not something I would have predicted I'd be doing like when I was younger.
So coaching individuals for, let's say, competition, and especially now, I imagine you have a good amount of remote clients, so you're not actually seeing them work out. They might send you videos of them lifting and whatnot, but you know, these could be people, like who's your farthest geographically, who's your farthest person?
I used to coach a guy in Japan, actually. I don't work with him any longer. Let me think about that. I have someone in Washington, you know, one of my clients used to live in Canada. So it really is, it can be anywhere. Yeah, for sure.
So you're not with them physically, right? So talk to me about that interaction. Like, are you guys setting up weekly meetings? What are you using TrueCoach? Like, how do you keep tabs on people in a way that is authentic and you know, deeper than just simply sending them programming, right? While you're not physically there with them.
Yeah. I did use TrueCoach for a really long time, and I used it when they actually first started, and it was called the Fitbot.
Yeah, Fitbot.
I still have some clients on it now, and it's a great tool, but I've moved over to more Google spreadsheets, and actually I use Slack and put all my clients kind of in a workspace, and then I can direct message them. But my process when I take on a new client, there's always a consultation. So I send them an intake form that asks them a lot of questions, like the first one being, why do you want to coach? Because I think that's really important to kind of establish what are their past relationships. Do they have have they had relationships with another coach? Were they following a blog? What about a coach, a person writing your programming and you communicating with is important to you? Because I don't think people necessarily might think about that. And there might be some things that kind of come out in that process of answering that question that they didn't even realize. And then I also know where they're coming from, and I know what expectations they would have for me, and maybe if for whatever reason that didn't align with what I was able to give them, we could kind of like figure that out off the bat. And then from there, just performance metrics. If they want to compete, have you competed before? What were your past scores? I do a little bit research on them. And then what goals you want to achieve. Do you want to try to get a ring muscle up? Do you want to snatch 1.5 times your body weight? Do you want to compete at the CrossFit Games? Those are all going to be very different things, or they could be similar paths with different timelines for those. Or do you just, you want to be fit and healthy or just try to get better at burpees? Like, I have spectrums of clients that they don't all try to aspire to make it to the CrossFit Games, but some of them do, and some of them have gotten there. And I would say those ones have been a very cool experience to have if you are a fan of the sport of CrossFit, just to be able to navigate that with somebody that honestly I would say is special, because I don't think every person that would realistically be possible for them. So, so anyway, I do consultation, and then there's an expectation that they fill out their feedback every single training day. So in Google Sheets, they have a column that they send that to me. They also can shoot me a message on Slack or text me, and then I do like video conference check-ins every like 4 to 6 weeks.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So, and one of our members, you have her daughter as one of your athletes.
Yeah,
so
small world.
That's a fun connection. So you coached at Requisite Fitness and several other boxes, and then you have these remote folks. What is similar to doing that, coaching, in person, group classes or personal training, and then what's different besides the obvious of not being able to physically see them work out? Because I feel like in the world of coaching, there are a lot of different avenues people can go down in terms of focusing on a specialty, focusing on doing what you're doing, programming for individual athletes. And so if someone's listening to this and thinking, oh, maybe this is something I'm interested in, what would you tell them in terms of the things that are similar, things that are different?
For sure. So I would say the biggest similarity, if you are doing CrossFit type programming, a lot of the stuff is going to be similar. So you're going to see back squats and cleans and wall balls and burpees, but how that is constructed to try to create a progression to get better at something might be more individualized if I'm coaching you one-on-one. So for instance, if you wanted to get better at ring muscle ups, and I watched your ring muscle ups and I was like, Chris, I think you need to get a little stronger. Just in your upper pull, I could put together a progression that would get your pulling strength up and then give you some drills to really work on transition or whatever it was. Maybe in a group class, that can be a little bit trickier to do, right? So you see somebody that's lacking pulling strength and you're like, hey, if you really want to work on this, you might need to either get in here a little early or stay a little bit later, and let's just work on increasing your pulling strength, but maybe not be able to give them something as specific. Both individuals can get to the same goal. It's just going to happen a little bit different, maybe different timelines, and I can be more specific with you. And then you also can keep me updated. And there's just a higher expectation between coach and athlete that, hey, we're on the same page, and you need to make sure you're communicating with me. So in some respects, maybe that timeline gets accelerated because we're really focusing on it. Maybe we're having more touches. But I've also had group clients before that are just like phenoms, you know, they get something 1 or 2 tries, or they're very, very diligent and they'll do exactly what you say. You don't even have to remind them. A month later, you're like, hey, how are those muscle ups going? You're like, oh, incredible. You know, I've been working on them 3 times a week. So as far as like movement, I see a lot of the similar trends in just the way people move in certain movements in CrossFit. So a lot of, whether you would call them faults or just maybe inefficiencies. So how I might solve that or try to improve it, or even create a prehabilitation if there's common issues with shoulders, basically all the joints.
What are the common things that you see?
Yeah, so I mean, for a lot of, honestly, men usually more than women, mobility, especially in the shoulders, the upper thoracic, big time, which can be super limiting. But then, you have the other side of the spectrum. You could have someone that's super lax and flexible. So you just need to be careful in a group setting if you're trying to prescribe something that's supposed to make them a little bit more, lax. You don't always want to do that with those types. But mobility for sure. I think trickier parts would be like metcons or conditioning and the stimulus, right? I might give someone a progression to get better at thrusters and chest to bar pull-ups, and write that in a way that we're trying to improve movement speed on just the thruster or something like that. I don't think I could go around a room and necessarily give individual stimuli, but you can still educate the whole class about, hey, this is Fran or something, like this is what it's supposed to feel like. It's not supposed to be super slow, it's supposed to be a little uncomfortable. Here are some scaling options. So you can do all that in both, groups, but with the individual, it's just going to be more specific to what their goals are.
Your athletes, are they primarily working out at home alone? Are they in a gym, but they're going to like open gym or doing it on the side? Like, where are they actually getting this work done?
Well, COVID definitely increased the amount of people doing things from home, and some people built home gyms, which is awesome. A lot of people have gone back to gyms, even if they built a gym, because of the social aspect. And that's one thing that I don't think people realize is such a huge benefit to CrossFit, or a group fitness gym, anywhere where you're able to interact and establish relationships with humans. And that's what I think is so much fun about this type of exercise, is like, yes, you're working out, which a lot of people honestly aren't motivated enough to do on their own, but now you get coaching guidance, you get to do it next to somebody else, and there is something very human about that shared suffering aspect, or even you could call it with maybe not suffering, but just learning and getting better and encouraging each other. So I've seen a lot of people go back to gyms and prefer not to do too many sessions at home because they had to do that for a long time. And I think training environment can be a huge factor, especially for the more competitive you are, I think the more important it is.
Yeah, I completely can see that and agree with that, in that we as humans are tribal people, right? Like when you think about it, I mean, it was safer to be in a group of people because you can have people protect you can have people hunt and gather, everyone had different skill sets to contribute to the greater good, greater group. And that, to me, is just built in our DNA. So I see a lot of people buying Pelotons and getting the mirror and all these, at-home things, which I think is totally great and fine, and it's an awesome option to have when you are at home or if you are busy, where getting in a 30-minute quick workout at home is great. But I will always believe in the in-person group structure, because to me, this is, for a lot of people, their third place. You know, like Starbucks CEO Charles Schultz, right, talks about Starbucks being the third place, which is a great goal. But you know, when I go to Starbucks, I'm not like chatting it up with the guy next to me, like I'm getting work done or whatever. Whereas here, you get people from all walks of life coming in. Honestly, you probably saw this at Requisite too, like people who probably wouldn't be friends otherwise, you know, because of various things, various reasons, but they have that common bond of working hard, learning new things, which is one of my favorite aspects of CrossFit. It's not simple, right? And putting in the work, right, and seeing some sort of result from it, even if it's just the feeling of working hard.
Yes,
You know?
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, obviously we know the health benefits, but I do think the mental benefits honestly might be more important, especially as we all get older, and just our life cycle, even for athletes, when they stop becoming athletes, still having an avenue to socialize and express themselves and feel like they are participating in something that is fun and kind of not losing that luster.
Yep.
But yeah, I think about this a lot, and just how, you know, I've always been attracted to sports as a vehicle to like not only express myself and challenge myself, but also just to learn. And I do feel like there's something deep in there that ties into kind of the human aspect of tribalism or whatever, where it's the one of the only things that, like, you take the Olympics, for example, that unites the entire world, right? Where we can all raise our own flags and be on our team representing our country, but we're playing the same sport as somebody across the world is, and competing against each other. And, you know, you're not worrying about all the other things that make us different, where you're almost embracing those differences, and you can just go out there and do your thing. So I just think there's something cool about it. And with, you know, fitness, obviously I'm an advocate for people learning how to eventually be independent in some aspect in their fitness, not always rely on the gym. Like if the gym's closed, I can't do anything today. And I think COVID has also illuminated that, like really challenge people that, okay, you might not be able to do what you could do in the gym today, but you can do something.
Right.
And then also use your fitness. Like, I've just gone on a bunch of ski trips, and I'm gonna go on more, and I'm like, wow, my legs feel a lot stronger than they did last year, and I can do harder terrain or be able to sustain my endurance longer, and like that is really awesome. Like that really is rewarding, because now I can do all these things I couldn't do before. So
yeah, I love that. A lot of our people say that this is their therapy, and it's a lot cheaper than therapy, right?
It is.
So in a way, you know, I believe coaches should not necessarily have a degree per se, but realize that the role of a coach is also like a counselor, teacher, coach, obviously, in the very obvious aspect. But a lot of people come here just to blow off steam and just to forget about everything else out there, right? And just get in the flow, because when you're in the middle of a workout, you're not thinking about anything else, right?
For sure.
So I don't know if you see that with like your individual clients. Like, do you find that just you're an outlet to them, not a therapist per se, you know, exactly, but you know, you're someone who they can turn to? Yeah,
absolutely. And honestly, my conversations with my clients are, as I hope they're rewarding to them, but they're very rewarding to me, because I get to learn just more about people and obviously them, and how to be a better coach. And so I've learned the most from all the mistakes I've made, to be honest, but I really enjoy those conversations, and I like to establish deep relationships with people, but that also takes time. And I think that, I mean, being a coach, I know the value and see value in a coach, but I think that as we grow up as just human beings, we start to lose lose the amount of people in our life that we can kind of look up to and learn from, right? So when we're young, our parents, obviously, and then we have all of our teachers. Once you get out of academia, you have maybe your boss, but who else do you have to kind of learn from?
Like
yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
You would look up to a boss. Right?
Or if you have a good boss.
Yeah.
Or, and then, you have your peers and stuff. And I think same thing with what a gym provides. I think a coach can be a guide, basically. And I definitely don't know everything. In fact, I feel like every day I've learned, I realize I know less than I think I do. But I think having people that you can be very honest with about whatever's going on with you is super helpful. Like you said, it's not therapy. And if I ever go down that path with people where I'm like, hey, I think maybe you should talk to somebody else about this because that's outside my scope. Right. But at the same time, I think everybody just wants somebody they can talk to and vent to. And I try to let athletes vent, but then I also have boundaries there where I'm like, this is not productive anymore. Like, you're not helping yourself. Like, you get 15 minutes to pout a little bit and then it's back to the drawing board. So I think that also can be helpful for people, just to realize you need to have constraints in your own emotional outlets, and or complaining about the same thing that you can't control over and over again is really not going to help you. So sometimes I can err a little bit too hard, and I think sometimes maybe I can be a little bit too soft, and I try to find a balance with people.
Depending on the person too.
Right?
For
sure. For sure.
I think that's the whole idea of as you learn more, you realize how much you don't know. I think there's an effect like the Dunninger effect.
Dunning-Kruger.
Dunning-Kruger. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's this how much time you spend doing something and the amount of knowledge that you have, and it goes up really high because people, when they first start something, they think they know a lot. And then all of a sudden, as you know more, it comes right back down because you just realize what you don't know.
For sure.
And then it goes back up as you actually do get that more experience.
Absolutely. And I think that just happens. That's just going to be a natural and recurring trend forever. I think there's always more things that you can learn. And then another thing is I think there's a process that happens in your brain where you are learning from somebody that you really resonate with, and you can kind of maybe put them on a pedestal and then assume that everything they say is right. And then maybe down the road, that becomes disproven, and then you're questioning everything. But I've definitely done that before, and I think also to just give maybe those people credit. Sometimes at the point in time they were, educating people on something. They were correct,
or
they,
For sure.
But it's such an interesting process of, you really I think in coaching and anything, you have to constantly be learning. And if you aren't passionate about that, you're going to have a hard time evolving and continuing, I think, to keep up with what's going on. So it's just part of the process. Can't be afraid to be wrong, because you probably will be eventually,
For sure.
And
many times.
For sure. Over and over again. But I will say, I think the benefit to coaching for many years is that I've seen a lot of different scenarios play out. I've experimented with things. So over time, you start to kind of weed out the things that don't work most of the time for people. But I try to stay open-minded, because I can also get a little bit myopic in believing that, this is the thing that works, and it might not work for somebody.
Right.
And that could be for so many different reasons. It's might not necessarily be the program. It could just be the way they interpret it, or their mindset, or silly things that you wouldn't even realize because it's a remote relationship. So I do prefer coaching people in person always, but unless anyone wants to move down to Georgia and work with me, I think that remote is you can still create a really good relationship with somebody.
Well, the pandemic has kind of encouraged that. So
For sure.
yeah, working remotely. Yeah, so let's talk about that. You're going to move or have moved to Georgia.
In the process
In
of
the
trying
process of
to.
it. You now will be working for a training think tank.
Yep.
So for people who don't know what training think tank is, what is it? What will you be doing? How did this come about?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, Training Think Tank is a coaching organization based out of Georgia. It was founded by Max El-Haj, who I did a mentorship with last year, and that's actually how I ended up getting the job.
Gotcha.
But it's a group of coaches, and they're all individual coaches. They do the same thing that I do. They coach people individually. They also do some group coaching now. We have a group program called The Design, as well as a education platform called The Classroom for coaches who want to continue their education. So coaches work on different projects within the realm of the design, the classroom, and coaching one-on-one. So as we were talking about earlier, one of the things that attracted me to them was their philosophy that they are a think tank. So, making sure that you're not in your own echo chamber of ideas, challenging each other, being okay with accepting that other people have different ways of doing things that could also work, and then you can actually end up learning something new from somebody else, and upgrading your own kind of methods. Mm-hmm. But I would say, generally speaking, there's a lot of similar philosophies about coaching and training protocols and those types of things. So they are kind of under the same umbrella, and all really trying to just help people achieve their goals, and in a way that creates sustainability and longevity, especially for athletes, which I feel like is really not, I don't want to say ignored, but there's not enough emphasis on that, like creating training programs that can get people to podium at the games, but also keep them from having surgeries when they're, in their 20s
Gotcha.
and 30s, and have longevity in the sport. Now, we don't really know what the life cycle of a CrossFit athlete is going to be because the sport is still
so
new.
Yeah.
But if there are people that are started as teens and maybe they will want to try to compete as a masters, like, couldn't they actually do that? Or is the way that they're training not really going to allow them to be able to do that? And even if they don't want to compete, I could even say be able to run around with their kids when they're 40, 50, 60.
Yep.
So I did the mentorship with Max in the summer, and that was an awesome experience. And actually it's coming full circle now because I'm working on a project to release a new mentorship program this year. Cool. For coaches who want to kind of have a more specific guidance and feedback in their own coaching process and their education. But honestly, the mentorship program finished, and one day I'm training in my garage and I get a text from Max, and he's like, would you be interested in moving down here to work for Training Think Tank? And I was like, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, sure, that would be awesome. So it kind of came out of the blue, and I feel very, very lucky, honestly, because I know there are tons of coaches that are beyond qualified to work for an organization like that. So I've started the beginning of January, and it's been really awesome so far, and just kind of trying to soak up as much knowledge as I can. And I've taken on some clients through them, but also transferred all of the clients I had before. So now it's nice because they're in the community, and that, I think that's a big part of it too, just having a community that people feel like they can be a part of. And that they also obviously believe in the same types of principles. But going back to some of the social aspect, I think people like that too. You like For sure. creating alliances to your sports teams or your hometown and all that stuff. So
yeah, well, it goes back to how when you joined the track team, you were competing as an individual for most of the events, but you were part of a team, right? So now your athletes are, for the most part, competing as individuals, but they're under the umbrella of Training Think Tank, which they can have those shared experiences even if it's remote. Right?
For sure. Yeah.
So do you have a title? Is it do you have a set role and tasks and everything, or is it more like, hey, let's come down here, let's just soak up as much as we can, and let's, you're building the mentorship program, obviously, but.
Yeah, so it's actually been a fairly fluid process, and when I asked that question to Max, he was like, well, you're going to start with remote coaching, which is what I'm doing right now. And then I came and he had some ideas, like the mentorship and some other things I'm working on. So it's kind of been, this is kind of the way they do it. It's like, all right, what are your interests? What are your strengths? What do you want to work on? And let's try to maximize that so you're doing something you actually want to do.
Yep.
And that's actually worked out really well.
Cool.
And I think that's a great way to kind of lead an organization. It might take a little bit more work on a front end, but that's kind of how they operate. Everybody is kind of on a team that does some collaborative work, and then everyone also has their own individual clients where they can really just run their own show and just make sure you get your work done in a timely and professional manner.
Nice, I like it.
Yeah.
So you're going out west skiing a little bit. A lot of people like traveling, and obviously have been restricted this past year with traveling. One of the questions that I like to ask is, what's on your bucket list? So whether that's travel related or otherwise, what's on your bucket list?
There's a lot of things on my bucket list that are travel related, because that's definitely one of my top, top hobbies, I guess you could say. But we are checking off one of them coming up. So I'm going to be flying out to Montana and going to Big Sky, doing some skiing there, then driving over to Wyoming, hitting Jackson Hole, which is one of my favorite places in the country, and then maybe Grand Targhee, and then over to Idaho to maybe check out some more stuff. But there's something about the mountains that just sucks me in, They're very captivating, and then obviously I just enjoy skiing, and getting better at skiing has been a goal over the last few years, and I've actually done less CrossFit and less other training in order to be able to get better at that and some climbing and some other stuff. So that's been an interesting shift, but just rewarding in another way to be able to use my fitness.
Yeah, for sure.
If possible, eventually I'd just like to be able to go overseas again and see some new places. I was born in South Korea, but I've never been there, so that would be a cool place to visit, hopefully at some point. And then what's been nice about coaching athletes that qualify for competitions is they're located globally. So I went to Argentina last year with an athlete, and so it would be cool, to travel to some cool places and be able to commingle, work and then also play.
And I know you're an avid reader as well. We talk a lot about books between the two of us. So what books have you read recently that stand out to you, or any takeaways from books? I feel like there's so many out there, but what are ones that have kind of stuck with you or you've read recently?
Sure. Well, I have a really bad habit of starting a lot of books at the same time, and
I don't know anyone like that.
And the good thing about that is I used to get very guilty when I did not finish a book cover to cover, and I've stopped caring about that. So it's actually nice because I can pick something up when I'm in the mood to read something in that kind of genre, which is often nonfiction. But have you heard of Breath by James Nestor?
Yep, it's on my list.
Yep.
I haven't
So
read it, but
that's been, it's been very popular. Just breathing in general has gotten really, really popular. So that is definitely a good read. I just finished, I think it's called The Mindful Athlete, and I forget the author's name, but he was Michael Jordan's mindfulness
trainer.
coach.
Yeah, coach. Okay,
something
cool.
like that.
Because his trainer also wrote a book, at least one book. I read that one. But I feel
Relentless.
Like this is a different one. Yeah.
Tim Grover or something like that.
Grover,
Yeah, that book was good too. But yeah, this guy, I forget what his name is. I'm blanking on it. But he talks about how he ties in Buddhism, and he coached the whole Bulls team, not just Michael, during a lot of those championship years.
Gotcha.
It's a really easy read. It's not very long. A lot of it resonated with me because I grew up in a household of yogis and, you know, parents that were very mindful, and my dad actually has a mindfulness organization that's trying to reach out to children and to teach them mindfulness at a young age, especially now with, you know, all our digital products. So I have a lot of I don't know if I'd even say experience, but just life experience.
Exposure.
Yeah. And it's funny because I think growing up, I actually resisted that a lot because it was like my parents were like, well, you know, you should, you know, be present and, you know, all that stuff. I'm like, yeah, whatever. But a lot of that I am trying to use now in coaching. And it's amazing how many parallels there are to just life in general outside of athletics. So if you are a coach, I definitely would recommend that one.
Cool. I like it.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to mention, coaching-wise, travel-wise, book-wise?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't know, it's nice to see you and hang out in Pennsylvania for a little bit. I'm still trying to figure out when I'm going to get settled in Georgia, but if anyone's interested, I guess, check out Training Think Tank.
Yeah, where can people find you?
Yeah,
for Training Think Tank?
Yeah, Training Think Tank on Instagram, trainingthinktank.com. Like I said, we're going to be launching a mentorship probably not until August.
Okay.
But
will be geared towards coaches.
Towards coaches, for sure. And I would say coaches that already have a year or two of experience, just because I don't think you'll be able to get out of it what you want if you haven't kind of been in the trenches. But outside,
so similar to how like level 2, CrossFit level 2, they say, hey, you should coach at least 6 months, if not longer, to really have context as to what we're talking about.
Absolutely. And then outside of that, the Training Think Tank has the classroom, which is just like a monthly subscription, and there's a ton of really good stuff in there that you can poke around. You can just sign up for a month and see if you like it. But they've really increased the amount of content they have. So they have a book club. They have like program design examples where, you know, you take an avatar of a person and try to write a program for them, then they analyze it. So they're doing a lot of cool monthly recurring things, and then they have certain series where they do deep dives on very specific issues or specific topics like breathing, for example. And then for me, I mean, I don't really post too much on social media. I repost stories of my clients doing cooler things that I can do. But yeah, I'm on Instagram at Perrin Behr, and that's pretty much it.
Cool.
Maybe you'll see me skiing in the next few weeks.
Yeah, love it. Well, that's how I realized, at least, that our member Janine, her daughter Marissa, has been training with you because you reposted something from her Instagram. But I saw it on hers as well because we follow Marissa as well.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Awesome.
It's funny.
Cool.
All right. Well, thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Please listen carefully.